What was supposed to be a calm, predictable morning on live television turned into one of the most shocking moments in modern entertainment. Under the glow of studio lights with cameras rolling and millions watching from their homes, before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think really caused Samuel L. Jackson to completely lose it on live television. Hollywood royalty. Samuel L. Jackson took his seat on the Good Morning America couch. The air seemed ordinary, until it wasn't. The man across from him, former athlete and morning show co-host Michael Strahan, was about to make a mistake so bold, so tone-deaf, that it would ripple through the industry within minutes. Samuel arrived with the professionalism that had defined his decades-long career. His suit was crisp, his smile confident, and his energy unmistakably magnetic. He was there for one purpose: to talk about his newest project, to connect with the fans who had supported him through every blockbuster and award season. But as he settled into the bright yellow couch, surrounded by Robin Roberts, George Stephanopoulos, and Strahan himself, no one in that studio could have imagined the storm that was coming. The opening seconds felt harmless. Michael leaned forward, offering that trademark TV charm. "So, Samuel, great to have you here," he began. Cameras zoomed in. The audience waited. Everything felt normal, until the next line dropped like a grenade. "Your new movie, it's got a lot of action, a lot of explosions. At your age, how much longer can you really keep doing these physical roles?" The words hung heavy in the air. Robin's smile froze. George shifted uncomfortably in his chair. And Samuel, the man who had faced countless press junkets, red carpets, and interviews, simply stared, his friendly grin fading into something colder, sharper. "My age," he repeated, his tone calm but edged with disbelief. The crowd murmured softly. You could feel the shift, the energy snapping from lighthearted to dangerous. "I'm not sure what my age has to do with anything, Michael. I'm in better shape than most people half my years." His voice was steady, but everyone could tell the temperature had dropped. The tension was real. Instead of recognizing the warning signs, Michael laughed, a nervous, hollow sound that only made things worse. "Come on, you know what I mean," he said, still smiling. "You're not exactly a spring chicken anymore. I'm just saying, at some point, don't you think it's time to pass the torch to younger actors?" For a moment, it was as if the whole studio stopped breathing. Robin tried to smooth things over, her voice gentle yet firm, attempting to steer the moment back on track. "Michael, I think what we're trying to ask," she said carefully, "is more about how Samuel maintains his incredible energy and dedication to his craft." But Strahan wasn't letting go. He leaned forward again, doubling down, his grin now looking more smug than friendly. "No, Robin, I'm asking a real question here. Samuel's been doing this for what, 40 years? 50? At what point do you look in the mirror and say, maybe it's time to retire?" That was it. The unspoken line of respect had just been crossed. You could see it in Samuel's face, the tightening of his jaw, the flicker of frustration in his eyes. This wasn't curiosity anymore. It was disrespect, live on national television. "First of all," Samuel said slowly, his words deliberate and sharp, "I've been acting professionally for over 4 decades. Yes, and in that time, I've built a career based on talent, dedication, and respect for the craft. Something you might want to learn about before you sit in that chair and question someone's value based on how old they are." His voice didn't rise, but the power in it shook the room. The audience gasped. George looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. But incredibly, unbelievably, Michael still wasn't done. He raised his hands in mock defense. "Whoa, whoa, whoa," he said quickly, his tone dripping with fake innocence. "I'm just asking questions here. Isn't that what journalists do? Or are you too sensitive to handle a little honest conversation?" Robin shook her head, visibly frustrated now. "Michael, that's not fair," she said. "Samuel's our guest and he deserves respect." "I'm giving him respect," Michael shot back. "I'm treating him like an adult who can handle tough questions. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe people have been treating him with kid gloves for so long that he can't handle real talk anymore." The audience began to murmur again. The energy was different now, tense, uneasy, electric. You could feel everyone realizing that this wasn't just an awkward interview anymore. This was a public clash between two strong personalities, one refusing to be insulted and the other too proud to back down. And then, Samuel made a choice no one expected. Slowly, calmly, he began to unclip his microphone, every movement deliberate, every breath controlled. He stood up from the couch, towering over the stunned hosts. "Real talk?" he said quietly, but with force that commanded attention. "You want real talk, Michael? Here's some real talk for you. Real journalists don't ambush their guests. Real journalists don't use their platform to belittle people. And real professionals, they know the difference between asking tough questions and just being disrespectful." The crowd erupted in whispers. Cameras caught Robin's shocked face. George's eyes darted to the producers behind the glass wall. Michael, though, still couldn't help himself. "Oh, here we go," he scoffed. "The celebrity can't handle a little pushback, so he's going to throw a tantrum and leave. Real mature, Samuel. Real mature." Robin's expression turned from discomfort to anger. "Michael, stop," George said urgently, his voice breaking through the noise. But the damage was done. Samuel placed his microphone on the coffee table, the sound echoing through the silent studio like a gavel hitting wood. Then he looked straight at Michael, steady, fearless. "You know what the sad part is?" he said, his tone low and cutting. "I came here today excited to talk about a project I'm passionate about. I came here to connect with people who've supported me throughout my career. But instead, I get ambushed by someone who clearly has some kind of agenda." Robin stood too, her hand reaching out instinctively. "Samuel, please. On behalf of the show, I apologize. This isn't what we wanted." Samuel's expression softened slightly as he nodded toward her. "I know you don't, Robin, and I appreciate that. But I'm not going to sit here and be disrespected on national television. I've earned better than that." The audience broke into light applause, hesitant at first, then growing louder, echoing around the studio. Michael's face turned red. The smug grin vanished, but even then, he couldn't stop himself from making it worse. "So you're really going to walk off?" he said, crossing his arms. "You're really going to prove my point about not being able to handle pressure?" Samuel turned back to face him one last time. "The only thing I'm proving," he said with quiet authority, "is that I respect myself too much to entertain this nonsense." "You think this is pressure, Michael? I've performed on stages around the world. I've worked with the greatest directors in cinema. I've built a legacy that will last long after both of us are gone. This?" He gestured around the studio. "This isn't pressure. This is just sad." Applause filled the room again, louder now with real conviction. The studio audience knew exactly what they had witnessed, dignity standing up to arrogance. Michael sat frozen, his expression dark and unreadable. Then, almost under his breath but still caught by the mic, he muttered, "Oh great, everyone applaud the guy who can't finish an interview. That makes sense." George turned toward him sharply. "Michael, enough, that's enough." But Michael wouldn't stop. "What? I'm the bad guy now because I asked legitimate questions? Because I didn't kiss his feet like everyone else does?" Samuel was already walking toward the exit. The sound of his footsteps echoed through the silent studio. Just before he reached the doorway, Michael spoke again, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "That's right. Walk away. Show everyone that you can dish it out in your movies but can't take it in real life." That final jab hit the air like a slap, but Samuel didn't flinch. He didn't turn around. He just kept walking, calm and collected, as Robin finally stood between them and said firmly, "Stop. Just stop, Michael. You're making this worse." The studio was in chaos. Robin's voice trembled slightly as she turned toward the cameras, trying to regain control. "We're going to take a quick break," George said suddenly, his tone sharp and urgent. "We'll be right back." But before the broadcast could cut away, Michael's voice cut through the noise once more. "We don't need to take a break," he insisted, his tone defiant. "Let's keep going. Let's talk about what really happened here. Let's talk about how entitled celebrities think they can control every conversation." The words sent a shockwave through the room. Robin turned toward him, disbelief and frustration mixing across her face. "Michael, what is wrong with you?" she demanded. "Why are you doing this?" Michael looked confused, genuinely confused, as if he couldn't understand why everyone around him was horrified. "I'm doing my job," he said, his voice rising slightly. "I'm asking questions. Isn't that what we're supposed to do? But George had heard enough. He leaned forward, his patience gone. There's a difference between asking tough questions and being hostile, Michael, he said firmly. What you did was hostile. Michael threw up his hands in disbelief. I wasn't hostile, he snapped. I was honest. There's a difference. And then, finally, a voice from the control booth echoed across the set, the countdown to the commercial break. We're going to commercial in 5, 4, 3. The lights dimmed slightly, the theme music began to play, and the screen faded to black. But behind the scenes, the damage had already been done. As soon as the broadcast cut, the tension snapped like a wire. Producers rushed onto the set, whispering frantically into headsets, trying to contain what had just exploded live on national television. Crew members avoided eye contact, afraid to move, afraid to speak. Robin took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly as she rubbed her temples. George leaned back in his chair, eyes closed, clearly exhausted. Michael sat motionless, staring at the floor, jaw clenched tight. The silence between them was deafening. No one knew what to say, or if there was anything left to say at all. When the commercial break ended, the cameras came back on, but the air was still thick with unease. Robin and George sat with forced smiles, their professionalism barely holding together. Michael, though still seated between them, looked furious, a man trapped between ego and consequence. Robin's voice was calm but heavy with regret as she addressed the audience. Welcome back, she began, her tone soft but steady. As you can see, we've had an unexpected turn of events this morning. Samuel L. Jackson has left the interview, and we want to address that. The studio was silent, except for the faint hum of the lights. George nodded slowly beside her. We at Good Morning America pride ourselves on respectful, engaging conversations with our guests. What happened this morning fell short of that standard, and for that, we apologize, to Samuel and to our viewers. Michael sat there in silence, his expression cold, his hands clasped tightly together. The apology hung in the air like a verdict. For once, he didn't interrupt. Robin continued, her voice full of empathy. Samuel L. Jackson is not just a talented actor, she said. He's a professional who's given decades to his craft and earned the respect of audiences around the world. He deserved better today. Her tone was firm, deliberate, and the weight behind her words made it clear who she was speaking to and who had crossed the line. The rest of the show dragged on painfully. The energy that once made Good Morning America feel warm and inviting was gone. Every smile looked forced, every laugh sounded hollow. During the cooking segment, the chef kept his tone light, but his hands shook as he sliced vegetables, glancing nervously toward the hosts. The weather report that followed was unusually short, the meteorologist speaking fast, avoiding eye contact, desperate to move past the awkwardness. The whole production felt like it was limping toward the finish line, everyone counting the minutes until it was over. Michael remained mostly silent throughout the rest of the broadcast, his anger simmering beneath the surface. At one point during a commercial break, he stood abruptly, knocking his chair slightly as he walked off the set without saying a word. No one stopped him. Robin simply watched him go, exhaling quietly as George looked down at his notes, shaking his head. When Michael returned minutes later, he sat back down heavily, staring straight ahead, refusing to look at either of them. It was clear that the tension wasn't just on camera anymore. It had infected everything around them. Finally, the show reached its final segment. Robin delivered the closing lines with professional grace, but her smile never quite reached her eyes. Thank you for watching, she said gently. We'll see you tomorrow with another great lineup. George added his own goodbye, though the strain in his voice betrayed the calm exterior. When the camera light finally turned red and the show faded to black, no one cheered. No one clapped. The studio, usually buzzing with energy after each broadcast, was quiet. The lights dimmed. The audience began to leave in silence, whispering to one another about what they had just witnessed. Michael stood immediately, heading toward his dressing room without acknowledging anyone. Producers tried to stop him, calling his name, but he ignored them, pushing through the hallway with quick, heavy steps. Robin stood near the stage, watching him disappear down the corridor. What a disaster, she said quietly, almost to herself. George joined her, his voice low. I've never seen anything like that, he admitted. Not in all my years doing this. Their words hung in the air, heavy, helpless, and true. Backstage, the crew moved slowly, almost dazed. Some whispered in disbelief, others just shook their heads, replaying the moment over and over in their minds. The exact second when Samuel stood, the look on his face, the way Michael kept pushing, and the way it all fell apart on live TV. Cameras were still being packed away, the set being cleared, but the atmosphere was thick with regret. Everyone knew this wasn't something that would just blow over. It would be talked about. It would be dissected. It would be remembered. Inside his dressing room, Michael paced back and forth. His phone was buzzing constantly, notifications lighting up the screen like sparks, messages, missed calls, headlines already popping up across the internet. But he didn't pick it up. He just muttered to himself, his reflection staring back at him from the mirror. "I was just being honest," he said quietly. "I was just doing my job." But even he didn't sound convinced. His words hung in the air, empty, defensive, echoing against the walls. Meanwhile, Samuel L. Jackson was already gone. He'd walked out of the building minutes after leaving the set, stepping into a black car waiting by the curb. The door closed behind him, and just like that, he was gone. No statements, no tweets, no angry outburst, just silence. The kind of silence that speaks louder than anything else. He didn't need to explain himself. He didn't need to defend his reaction. His dignity, his professionalism had already made his point. The world had seen enough. Within minutes, the clip hit social media. Viewers who had watched it live wasted no time sharing their reactions. The footage spread like wildfire. One post after another, millions of views piling up within hours. Hashtags exploded across platforms, with people everywhere taking sides. Some defended Michael, arguing that he was just doing his job, but the overwhelming majority stood behind Samuel. They saw what everyone in that studio had seen, a man pushed past the point of respect by someone who couldn't tell the difference between journalism and arrogance. Online forums filled with comments. He handled it with class. That was beyond disrespectful. Michael's ego just ruined his career. It was a digital storm, impossible to stop. Even celebrities began weighing in. Actors, directors, journalists, all posting messages of support for Samuel. Many praised him for staying calm when most people would have lost their temper. Others called out Michael by name, demanding accountability. The entire entertainment world was talking about one moment, 38 seconds of live television that had changed everything. Back at the network, the fallout was immediate. Emergency meetings were called, executives flooded into the conference rooms, voices raised, phones ringing non-stop. The Good Morning America producers looked exhausted, their faces pale as they reviewed the footage frame by frame, trying to decide what to do next. This wasn't just an awkward moment anymore. It was a full-blown crisis, a public relations nightmare that had unfolded in real time. Robin sat quietly in her dressing room after the show, her head in her hands. She couldn't stop replaying the interview in her mind. Every line, every pause, every second she could have intervened sooner. "I should have stopped him earlier," she whispered. "I should have stopped it before it got that far." Even though she knew it wasn't her fault, the guilt lingered. Meanwhile, George sat alone at his desk, scrolling through headlines already flooding the internet. Each one told the same story. Samuel L. Jackson walks off GMA set after heated exchange with Michael Strahan. He closed his laptop, leaned back in his chair, and sighed. Years of reputation, built on professionalism and trust, now threatened by one morning gone horribly wrong. The thing about live television is that there are no second takes. Every look, every word, every pause, it all goes out to the world, unfiltered, and what had gone out that morning couldn't be taken back.